Hello aspirants, a warm welcome to all of you to Sriram's IAS platform. So friends, welcome back to Anthropology PYQ series. So friends, in today's discussion, let us take up another important question and let's try to know how to write answer for that particular question. So here, today also, let's try to proceed with on-board presentation as you were just requesting. So let's see how we can proceed and how we can do. So first, let's explore the question of the day for us. So the question of the day for us, it is basically on the day 21, we have this question. So look at the question now. How political economy is integrated with the ecological and adaptability perspectives in biocultural anthropology? So this is the question that is there with us. So have you gone through the question? So my first question to all of you, those who have joined in online, is that, so from which portion of the syllabus the question has been given? So can anyone just guess the portion of the syllabus? Or otherwise, can you just guess like what is the basic central theme of the question? Right, so very good morning to all once again. So first, the question has been picked from the ecological anthropology point of view. So in ecological anthropology, we have one specific field, that is biocultural anthropology. So question has been picked and it has been represented from biocultural anthropology point of view. So the central theme of the question is the biocultural anthropology. So what the question is seeking us to explain is that in biocultural anthropology, which is a subfield of anthropology, so there are three key concepts. One concept is that political economy. Another concept is that the ecological adaptability or ecological perspective, that is ecological and environmental stress, and the human adaptations. So the question seeks to explain, or we need to write that in biological anthropology, what is the relationship between the political economy and the ecological anthropology as well as the human adaptation. So how they are intricately interlinked. So this is the demand of the question, right? So now let's try to explore and let's try to know more about this particular question. So where first we should proceed and we should understand in a systematic fashion. So let's try to understand the question from the basic central theme point of view. So first we should understand what is the biocultural anthropology and what does it do. So first, let us try to understand that. So if we say from the perspective of the biocultural anthropology, so biocultural anthropology is basically, it's a subfield of the anthropology, or it's a branch of anthropology which systematically deals with respect to two important aspects. One is nothing but we have human biology and we have human culture. Human culture and human biology. Human culture and human biology. So what does this biocultural anthropology explores is that how human culture is shaped. How human culture shapes human biology. That means human culture shapes human biology, and further the human biology determines the culture. So it simply says, or it simply looks into this aspect that biocultural anthropology, it's a branch or subfield of anthropology which tries to explore an intricate interrelationship between the human culture and the human biology. There, it tries to explore this aspect that how human culture shapes the human biology and how human biology further determines the human culture. So this is the basic subject matter of the biocultural anthropology. So here, there is another important factor that determines this particular aspect. So we have environment. So here environment plays vital role in this entire process. So that's one another important aspect we should remember. So with the help of the environmental stresses, so human beings will systematically adapt to various biological adaptations. So here we will have various human adaptations and we will have some cultural adaptations. Cultural adaptations. So what happens here? So due to the environment and ecological factors, the environmental and ecological factors, they will systematically try to explain this, that. So there are lot of what to say, biological adaptations, and we will have some sort of cultural adaptations. We can say biological adaptations. Biological adaptations and cultural adaptations. So now this is the basic core theme of the biocultural anthropology. So if we systematically see from the perspective of the biocultural anthropology, so the foundations for the biocultural anthropology, we have to trace back from some important concepts. So what were those concepts and who proposed those concepts and what are they? So we have to understand that also in a systematic fashion. Now look here carefully. So first, so if you want to explore about the biocultural anthropology, so foundations of it were there in understanding some key concepts. So what are those key concepts here? So first and foremost concept that you should remember here is that one thing, that is the cultural ecology is one thing. Second thing is the ecological anthropology. Second thing is ecological anthropology. And third one, it is basically the political economy. Political economy. So these three things you should focus and you should keep understanding. So now, what is this cultural ecology? Who proposed the concept of cultural ecology? Can you able to recollect that? So if you can recollect, then you can just text in the comment box. So cultural ecology, the concept of cultural ecology has been proposed by Julian Stewards. It has been proposed by Julian Stewards. So Julian Stewards was one scholar belonging to the new evolutionary school of thought. So where this cultural ecology is further known as the ecological or cultural determinism. It is known as cultural determinism, or it is also known as environmental determinism. So what does it say is, so culture is shaped by the environment. So that is the basic aspect of the subject of this cultural ecology. So culture is shaped by the environment and ecology. So that's all. Then ecological anthropology. So ecological anthropology, it's a subfield of the anthropology which deals with the concept of human adaptations to the environmental stresses. So this branch, like one of the pioneer anthropologists whom we can recollect in ecological anthropology is Roy Rappaport. Roy Rappaport. So we can remember him. So he is also an American anthropologist. So he systematically laid foundations and contributed into the ecological anthropology. So what does this ecological anthropology says? So ecological anthropology says that so there are so many environmental stresses. So to this environmental stresses, humans will adapt systematically. So these adaptations would be these adaptations will be biological adaptations, behavioral adaptations, and cultural adaptations. So adaptations are various types. So like that. So ecological anthropology argues this. So one of the pioneer anthropologists was Roy Rappaport. So you should remember his name. Now, what is this political economy? So political economy is one such branch of the economy or polity which systematically tries to establish how the power structures in polity will tries to control various economic factors. So that's what it is deals. So it says that how political power structures will determine the economic factors. So this is the basic core theme of the political economy. So try to catch this thing. So now first, if you see from very basics onwards, so what is economics? Economics is nothing but that branch of the social sciences which deals with the factors of production. So what are the factors of production? Can you type in the chat box? Factors of production. So factors of production are basically nothing but land, labor, enterprise, and the capital. So isn't it? So land, labor, capital, and enterprise. So now in the developed or in the in current scenario, we can also take technology also into the consideration of the factors of production. So there, if you see, all those economic factors will be under the control of the political structures. So political structures means the government, it would be the governance or it would be the state. So all these powers, all these factors of production would be controlled by the government. So this is what the political economy says. And here, what is the core essence of our question is that, so how political economy and the ecological anthropology through in the form of ecological adaptations and the cultural ecology has a kind of intrinsic relationship. So we have to establish that. So that is one thing. So that means biocultural anthropology systematically tries to explore an intricate relationship that is existing between the political economy. So then it tries to explore the relationship between the environmental stresses that means simply to say ecological anthropology. So then human adaptability. Now the question is trying to explore about the intricate relationship that exists between these three concepts. How these three are interlinked. So this is what the basic demand of the question. So you should try to mention it in a systematic fashion. So now let's try to explore more how they are intricately interconnected. So here, when you see from the perspective of this, so usually what happens with respect to the political economy? So let's try to explore. So when we see from the point of political economy, what does it do? So political economy systematically it tries to explain as that it determines who will have the control of the resources. So like be it could be land, be it could be labor, be it could be food, be it could be some sort of nutrition. So all such kind of factors, right? So this is one thing. So here, what does this say further? So who controls the factors of production? So this would be the core subject matter of the political economy. And it systematically explains us this aspect that So mostly we have the powerful groups. So powerful groups will control the resources, and our marginalized sections will go for the deprivation of the access. So two things you should remember is powerful people in the society, they will enjoy the access to these resources and they will control these resources, whereas marginalized sections in the society, they will systematically, they will be deprived of access to them. So this is the core concept of the political economy. So we have land, we have food. Let's take for example food or resources, food resources or nutrition. So the powerful sections will control the food and nutrition kind of aspects. So where the marginalized sections will not be exposed to more of the nutritious aspects. So that's one important thing we should remember. Then we have environmental stresses. So what happens here? Environmental stresses. So where you can just mention what are these environmental stress. So the environmental stresses, like let's say for example, it could be the climate, or it could be say for example the nutrition, or you can talk about some basic features like pollution is one thing, or apart from pollution you can also talk about some aspects like, so further you can take up any environmental factors or ecological conditions. Let's say for example the altitude, or these kind of factors. So what do? They try to create some sort of stress in the people. So this stress further, it says that it's not a natural thing. So this stress, that is this environmental stress, is not created by the environment alone, rather it is created culturally by the political power. So that's one another important thing that you should remember. So this stress here, stress is not entirely environmental, rather it is created culturally by political powers. So this is what? This is what one thing that you should remember. Then further, like what happens, so if you see for all these kind of environmental stresses which are shaped or which are created by the political economy, so we will have some sort of human adaptability. So humans will adapt to the existing ecological stresses. So what kind of things? Let's say for example, if you are at the high altitude place and the government has neglected systematically for providing some sort of things, so then biologically there would be certain adaptations. Let's say adaptations could be, for example, adaptations to hypoxic conditions. Adaptations to hypoxic conditions. So let's say for example, we can have increased breath rate, or like we say elevated blood cell levels. Let's say for example like RBC, etc. So that would be one adaptability. Then for example, if there is nutritional stress or lack of availability of this stress, so then we can have some sort of adaptations like, let's say for example, stunted growth, or we will have nourished people. So these kind of adaptations we can see. Can you able to catch that? So when we see basically what happens, so political power, it tries to create some sort of environmental stresses. So this environmental stress leads to some sort of adaptations in the human beings. So this kind of adaptability so is brought or it is created by some political power and the environmental stresses. So we have to establish the relationship between these three. So that's the basic demand of the question. So how can we just explain this? So what happens here? So here what you have to remember that the political power created this environmental stress. So this environmental stress shapes the human adaptability, and human adaptability, it embodies various biological adaptations into the body. So that's how culture gets embodied in the body. So this is another important thing. So that is one thing. So we can take up an example and we can try to understand this concept in a systematic fashion. So where there was an American scholar known as Nancy Sheffer Hughes. Nancy Sheffer Hughes. So Nancy Sheffer Hughes, she was an American anthropologist who systematically conducted some of the experiments. So she systematically found some sort of unique behavior among the Brazilian shanty towns. So in the Brazilian shanty towns, what she found is that she found something and she wrote a book by name Death Without Weeping. Death Without Weeping. So this is the book that is written by Nancy Sheffer Hughes in 1992. So in this particular book, we can see a systematic correlation of the political economy with that of the environmental stresses and that of the human adaptability. We can see that in a systematic fashion. So how is that? Let's try to explore. So there, first we can systematically see. So what has happened? So it was the case of the Brazilian shanty town study. It was Brazilian shanty town study. So what she observed there systematically means, so she systematically observed some things. So what has happened there in the Brazilian shanty towns? So there was a kind of political negligence towards the nutrition, providing nutrition to the people. So first thing was, there was political negligence. So the political negligence has, what kind of negligence it is? So they fail to provide nutrition to the people. So they failed in this. So this political negligence has systematically laid, or like the lack of access to the nutrition. So there people were exposed to more and more aspects of malnutrition. So that's one thing. So there was malnutrition. So there was malnutrition. So here what happened, this malnutrition, so this malnutrition further led for lot of deaths, particularly among the infants. So this infant mortality, we can say, there was high infant mortality rates. So this was a kind of reaction to this kind of thing. So for this, the mothers of the deceased children, they have adapted. So once the child dies, So they used to feel that it's a very normal thing, like the death of the children is very normal, and they've never used to have any sort of emotional attachment and emotional feelings towards that death. So they used to take it casually. So one more child has been died. So that's how. So they have adapted, that means mothers have adapted to a casual feeling where they were never used to weep. Mothers never used to weep. So that was an adaptation. So here, how things are linked, you see, there was negligence of the political negligence. So you can remember this. So what was the negligence there? So political negligence was simply that, like there was failure of provision of the nutrition to the people. So this failure of provision of nutrition to the people, so it shaped that it created people with malnutrition. So mothers were malnourished. So when there is malnourishment, so obviously malnourishment leads to a kind of defects in the development of the children. So that defects, further it led to deaths, rise in deaths among the infants. So infant mortality rate was very high. So it became internalized to the mothers that, so mothers started feeling that the death of the children or infants is very normal in the society. So that's where, so they never used to have any sort of emotional attachment, and they were never used to feel and express their grief in the form of weeping. So this concept Nancy Sheffer Hughes has systematically explained in the concept of Brazilian shanty town studies, and she written a book that is known as Death Without Weeping. So this is how she tried to explain the concept of the intricate interrelationship between these three. So what are those three? So political economy, environmental stress, and human adaptability. So you should remember. So that's one another important aspect. So furthermore, so you can have some more examples, like we have other examples which talks about the concept of we can explain this with the help of this. So where, like Paul Farmer, so another scholar, so Paul Farmer has systematically explained the concept of how HIV and TB has flourished in the tribal groups. So this is another important study. So where it was talking about the colonial negligence has led to shaping of, or like prevalence of HIV and prevalence of TB in the different sections. So that's another important study that you can remember. So there we have studied one concept or one question about the culture and embodiment. Can you able to recollect that? So culture and embodiment. So try to just check or go through this video. So in this video you can find some of the examples for this particular concept. So search for the video. So we have already made a previous year question on the culture and embodiment. So in this question you can find a lot of examples like the Nancy Sheffer Hughes study in the similar fashion, Paul Farmer's study on HIV and TB prevalence. So that is one thing that you can have it, right? So that's how, that's the demand of the question, and you have to mention all these aspects. So how political economy, environmental stresses, and human adaptability are intricately interlinked. So you have to mention this. So this is the chief demand of the question, right? So any further doubts in this particular aspect? So the chief demand or the central theme of the question was the biocultural anthropology. So where it's a branch of anthropology which deals with various aspects. So what does it deal first? So it deals with how human culture and human biology are related. So it says that human culture shapes the human biology, and human biology further determines the human culture. So that is one thing. So this is further attached to the concept of environment. So environment plays vital role in this interplay between human culture and human biology, right? So small example to say, if you happen to just go to high altitude places, let's say for example, if you happen to just move to Kulu Manali, so there you are a person from plain area and you are moving to high altitude place like Kulu Manali. So there what you feel is that there would be less availability of oxygen. So this less availability of oxygen makes you some changes. So what are those changes? So change could be that you may feel dizziness, you may feel like a lack of breathlessness. So for all this, what happens? There could be some immediate and acclimatizational responses. What were they? Increased breath rate, or like let's say for example rise in the levels of RBC, so that the oxygen carrying capacity will be increased. So that's how. So environment will shape or influence the human biological factors. So over the period, if you are there in the Kulu Manali, so then what happens? So usually your body will get adapted to those kind of structural aspects. So there what happens further? This changes will be normalized. So they will be geneticized. So like that, human biology will be shaped by the environmental stresses and environmental factors. And finally what happens? So this human biological adaptations will further leads to shaping of the determining of the human culture. So accordingly we will take up measures and we will frame the culture. So that's how the entire concept of biocultural anthropology deals, right? So here, like as I was saying you should remember about and you should understand these three concepts. So one is cultural ecology, ecological anthropology, and political economy. So political economy is a branch of political science and economy. So where there were so many scholars like Adam Smith, or like we have so many scholars who talked about the laid foundations for the political economy. So that's what the entire concept is all about. Right? So the question was, political economy has been given by which scholar? So political economy, it's a huge branch. So a group of scholars has put their contributions. One among them you can recollect is Adam Smith, like that. So that's with respect to this particular question. So I hope it is clear to you all, right? So this is what you have to write in this particular answer. So finally you can conclude by stating that the political economy, environmental stresses as well as the human adaptability are intricately interlinked and which are central in the biocultural anthropology. So that's how you can conclude the answer, right? So is it clear? So the question is, can we say that due to political failure we see environmental stress and people are suffering? Yes, exactly. So environmental stress. So environment is two types of environments you can see. Environment means the surroundings in which you live. So it's not only the natural environment, you will have cultural environment also. Let's say, for example, so political failure will lead to the environmental stress. So how? Let's say, for example, if you take up an example of Delhi, so in Delhi, as of now, there is lot of pollution, so environmental pollution. So the environmental pollution here, it is not natural. So the environmental pollution here, it is cultural. So what's the core concept here? So due to the political negligence means failure to curtail the pollution levels has led to create a kind of environmental stress in the Delhi. So that's how we can say that the pollution, that is a form of environmental stress that has been created by the political failure. Is that it clear? In the same fashion, same thing that we have saw here also. So Nancy Schaeffer Hughes, what she said, so political failure to provide a proper nutrition that has led to malnourishment kind of conditions the people. So this further led to more and more infant mortality rate. So this is the environmental stress. So can you able to catch that? So this is how political failure leads to create environmental stress, and the environmental stress leads to the adaptability. Now what's happening in Delhi? So people are just getting adapted to the levels of pollution here. So they started wearing masks and they started living with air purifiers. So all such kind of things are nothing but some adaptability measures that we have taken it, right? So that's the basic aspect. I hope it is clear to you all now. So that's what the core essence of the concept of this thing. So this is the question and this is how you can proceed further. So that's all for the day from my side. So I hope things are clear to you all. So friends, we will meet again in the next session and let's try to take up another important question and let's try to answer that particular question. So Thank you all for joining me with the discussion. We'll meet tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. sharp. So thank you all.